My sister has always been manipulative and cruel, yet my parents favored her as their golden child. Am I the asshole for showing them her true nature? Lisa, my 18-year-old younger sister, is the real embodiment of evil on earth, in my opinion. I am a 23-year-old woman. I have attempted to persuade my parents to see the truth over the years, but they have never trusted me, until now. For background, I have always had a tense relationship with my parents, mostly because of Lisa. My mother lost a kid due to a miscarriage, which had a profound impact on her, which is why my parents cherish her. A few years later, Lisa was born, and was considered their miracle child, a ray of happiness and optimism that eased the anguish of their earlier loss. My parents made her the center of our family's existence by lavishing her with love and care. To be clear, when we were kids, I adored my younger sister. Simply put, I began to gradually realize that Lisa possessed a remarkable gift for manipulation that none of my relatives could match. She was skilled at playing the victim and knew how to make the scenario work in her favor. Our grandparents once gave me an old pocket watch for my birthday. I was overjoyed that it was a family heirloom. Lisa continued asking me to share it with her, obviously jealous. Since it was a present for me, I declined. She attempted to convince our parents, but they were unable to stop her because it came from our grandparents. Knowing that I was afraid of spiders, Lisa put a house spider inside my pillowcase that night. I shrieked as I woke up from my sleep to the terrifying feeling of a spider crawling across my flesh. Lisa looked astonished and sympathetic as my parents hurried in. She exhibited no remorse, and later, when we were alone, she confessed with a spooky smile that she had placed the spider there to teach me a lesson. I once invited my classmate Mark over to watch a movie since I was crushing on him. To impress him, I got dressed up. Lisa giggled and purposefully spilled juice over my dress when Mark got there. In an attempt to conceal my shame, I had to change. She then wouldn't leave us alone while the movie was playing and started telling Mark embarrassing anecdotes about me as a kid. Lisa grinned and told Mark he could do a lot better than me just as he was ready to go. Mark hurried out, feeling uneasy the whole time. I have warned my parents about Lisa's antics over the years, but they have consistently written it off as her being impressionable and immature. They believed that I was the family's troublemaker. After a while, I stopped whining. While I frequently felt alienated, Lisa continued to be their favorite. I put a lot of effort into my studies, was accepted to a reputable college, and left home. But Lisa always made it plain that she hated having me around when I returned home. She tampered with my possessions, disregarded me, and cut off my conversations with our parents. In an effort to get along, my parents encouraged us to avoid going home during breaks. Instead, my parents didn't appear to object because they believed I was being independent by spending time with my friends' families. Lisa opted for community college after graduating from high school since she lacked the grades necessary for college. As a result, she was never had to leave our parents' home. I currently work in San Francisco for a multinational company, and I truly love what I do. I don't often go home, although I do occasionally communicate with my folks. I have absolutely no communication with Lisa. Let's get to the story. My father suffered a heart attack that almost killed him. Thankfully, he miraculously survived and was taken to a hospital right away. I bought tickets and traveled back home to be there for them as soon as my mother called to inform me about it. In addition to prescribing a number of drugs, the physicians also encouraged my father to begin exercising. My father told me how fortunate he was to have been saved and said he wanted to spend more time with us as a family after being released. I chose to stay at our place for a few days since I could understand his perspective. It wasn't an issue because I have the ability to work remotely at my job. But I could see that my presence was really upsetting Lisa. Since we were both older now and I didn't want to argue after our dad's heart attack, I did my best to stay away from her. Since we hadn't gone anywhere together in a while, my father proposed that we all take a family vacation one morning over breakfast. Despite my initial misgivings, I consented since I understood how important it was to my dad. Lisa, on the other hand, was not happy about it but was forced to follow the plan. All of our travel and lodging arrangements were handled by my father. Since I sincerely wanted to spend time with my parents, I prepared my leave of absence in advance and told my coworkers not to get in touch with me during this period. However, I discovered that my airline ticket had been cancelled when we got to the airport. My father asserted that he had purchased and paid for my ticket, and we exchanged perplexed glances. After more research, I discovered that the ticket bearing my name had been inexplicably cancelled out of the four. I looked at Lisa as I stood there trying to make sense of what was happening. The devious smirk on her face was one I had seen so many before, the exact expression she would wear after successfully executing one of her cunning ploys. She was the one who had cancelled my ticket, most likely from my father's computer, I knew at that same moment. She simply stood there grinning at me when I began to yell at her. Lisa had cancelled my ticket since she didn't want me on the family trip in the first place, I told my dad. My mother didn't believe me at all and said, "Your sister would never do something like that." She also accused me of being envious of my younger sister and said that my ticket being cancelled was just a random accident. In an attempt to defend it, my father also suggested that I shouldn't hold Lisa responsible and that it might have been an airline error. My parents' inability to believe that their cherished miracle child could be responsible for such dishonesty completely irritated me. But there was nothing I could do now. There were no other flights scheduled for that day, and my ticket had already been cancelled. Even though I might be able to get a flight the next day, I didn't look forward to going home, finding a new flight, and going it alone. This was meant to be a family vacation, after all. Additionally, I was terrified of having to stay in the same room as Lisa while on the vacation. Although I had thought she had changed over the years, I couldn't help but wonder what other plans she might have to ruin my vacation if she was responsible for cancelling my plane ticket. At first, my father was apprehensive, saying they might all return home and arrange another vacation at a later time. But then he began to talk about how long it had been since he had taken a holiday. According to my mother, I frequently travel for work and wouldn't miss anything if I didn't go. I felt upset by their remarks because they seemed to be gently pressuring me to let them depart without me. They immediately agreed when I informed them they might stay on vacation if they so desired. I was disappointed that they didn't care if I joined them or not, even though I didn't want the money I had paid for the tickets and accommodations to be wasted. It became evident that they had no problem traveling as a family of 3 for the family holiday. Thus, I found myself standing by myself at the airport as my parents and Lisa left for their much-awaited journey. Instead of spending a lonely day at our family home, I made the decision to go back to my home in San Francisco. I made an effort to put the experience behind me and concentrated on making the most of the remainder of my leave. I made the most of my break by reading, reconnecting with old acquaintances, and taking a solo vacay. At times during the trip, my parents would video call me to express how much they were having fun without me. It seemed as though my absence had no bearing whatsoever on their trip. I wasn't devastated that I missed the trip, but I couldn't get rid of the sense of alienation. It was just another example of the favoritism that had always pervaded our family. But it came as a surprise when I wished for my parents to finally see Lisa for who she really was. My mother had left me multiple missed calls when I woke up a few days into their vacation. I called her back right away since I was worried that my father's health would suddenly deteriorate. Fortunately, she answered, although her voice was very upset. She told me that something really upsetting had happened when I asked whether everything was well. It seems that my father's vital cardiac meds were running out every day, and my parents had observed this. This was concerning since, given his precarious condition, my father could not afford to skip his medication. They were unsure if they could locate substitutes because they were in a strange nation. They looked everywhere in their room but couldn't find anything. Then, while using Lisa's hotel room to borrow sunscreen, my mother found all the missing pills hidden on Lisa's bedside table. It was a terrifying revelation. At last, my parents came to the realization that their cherished miracle child had been purposefully endangering and threatening my father's health. When my mother inquired as to whether they ought to speak with Lisa, her voice wavered. I suggested that they hold off until they got home in order to collect their ideas and supporting documentation. It would be pointless to confront Lisa right away because she was a skilled manipulator and would probably make up excuses. But that night, something unexpected occurred. Despite my caution, my parents must have gone up to Lisa. My father called me late at night and told me that Lisa was in jail. His voice was shaking. I was taken aback. He described how Lisa threw a complete fit when they asked her about the drugs. She hurled things, yelled obscenities, and mostly attacked my father, saying he had purchased a ticket for me when he ought never to have permitted me to join them on their family trip. Lisa promised my parents that she would give them a lesson they would never forget if they remained in my company. She snapped, and things quickly got out of hand until someone at the hotel phoned the police. Lisa was taken into custody after she refused to calm down and insulted the officers when they arrived. After a few hours, Lisa was freed, but at that point, my parents were powerless. My parents sought to postpone their flight since they were desperate to get home. But they found that their wallets and passports were gone. It turned out that they were stranded in a distant nation because Lisa had either concealed or thrown away their passports. My parents started to see Lisa for who she truly was for the first time. Having always stood up for Lisa, my mother was suddenly overcome, astonished, and upset at the discovery of her angelic daughter's true identity. They lacked the funds and paperwork to take a plane back, so she called me and begged for assistance. I informed her that they needed to locate their passports before I could transfer funds via Western Union. I was sure Lisa hadn't thrown them away. At last, my parents began to see that I had been telling the truth about Lisa's shenanigans the entire time. Despite not including me in the trip, they expressed regret for their actions and gratitude for my assistance. It was difficult to overlook the years of partiality that had cost me their love, even if I wanted to forgive them. Update 1. My parents contacted with information every day, and I became more and more nervous. My parents threatened to contact the police once more if Lisa didn't return their passports once she was released from jail. Lisa had no choice except to show where she had concealed them. My parents confronted Lisa when they got home and instructed her to gather her things and go. They had finally realized the truth about her destructive and deceptive behavior, and they had finally reached their breaking point. They were concerned that Lisa might steal my father's prescription drugs and jeopardize his health once more. Another yelling match resulted from this altercation. Lisa vented her rage and contempt by making false accusations about my parents. She stated that she felt pushed to the brink when they invited me on the trip and that she didn't want to share them with anybody else. Lisa asserted that she was more than enough for them both and insisted that they disown me. When my parents attempted to reason with her, she continued to accuse them. Lisa became so enraged and desperate that she threatened to tell everyone that they had abused and neglected her when she was a youngster. She intensified her threats, saying that if they persisted in demanding that she leave, she would go to the police and make false allegations against them. My parents were really concerned by these threats since they are well-respected physicians in the neighborhood and such accusations could damage their reputation. Since then, Lisa has persisted in making my parents' lives challenging. Lisa became enraged and began smashing things when she found out they were talking to me on a regular basis. To make matters worse, she continues taking my parents' car keys and concealing them, which makes it difficult for them to get to work each day. My mother phoned me crying just tonight following yet another unfortunate event. Lisa wanted my mother to prepare dinner for her, so she threw a fit and yelled. Lisa went on a frenzy and broke furniture all around the home when my mother refused, claiming she was exhausted from work. Then, in order to keep our parents from sleeping, she withdrew to her room and turned up the music. My parents are suffering greatly emotionally and mentally as a result of the situation, which is getting worse. Although I had hoped they would realize Lisa's true character, I now fear she could actually endanger them. I can't even go back home because I could set her off even more, which would result in more violent altercations. I'm making every effort to get my parents to seek legal advice in order to resolve this recurring issue once and for all. The greatest option to safeguard my parents and bring harmony back to our family seems to be through the legal system. Update 2. As many of you anticipated, Lisa has been arrested. This was an unavoidable result of her growing shenanigans. She attacked our parents with a knife one evening following a furious dispute. They had to call the police because they were so terrified. Lisa was quickly arrested by officers on assault allegations. My parents felt it was time to look for a long-term solution while Lisa was in custody. They sought advice from a lawyer, who helped them navigate the court system in order to remove Lisa from their house. Lisa had to vacate, according to a legal eviction notice they issued. Even if they found this decision difficult, it was essential to protect them. My parents only wanted her out of their house and didn't want to file any more charges. They gave her a written notice outlining all the legal specifics of why and when she had to leave, and they also bailed her out of jail. After that, they went to court with their attorney to start the eviction procedure, which involved suing Lisa. My parents were devastated by this development and felt terrible remorse for bringing their own daughter to court, but they knew there was nothing else they could do. After a while, the court formally ordered Lisa to vacate the house. They would be legally allowed to take her off the property if she didn't go voluntarily. By next week, Lisa should be gone. Now that they've taken a step toward taking back their house and their tranquility, my folks are finally beginning to exhale with relief. Although it has been a difficult trip, they are optimistic that after Lisa leaves, things will get better. Throughout this trauma, I have maintained a tight relationship with them, and I intend to take them to San Francisco for a few weeks. After everything they've been through, it will provide them with a much-needed respite and an opportunity to unwind. I'm excited to get to know them better and help them in any way that I can. Update 3. Reading through the hundreds of comments that have been left on my post has taken some time. Many of you recommended that we think about having Lisa assessed to see if there may be a mental health problem at work. The problem is that we cannot make Lisa go for a checkup against her will because she is an adult. We don't want to push her and add to the already complex scenario because of her violent outbursts. My parents went down to San Francisco to be with me for a few days, as I mentioned in my previous report. After everything they had been through in the past few months, they wanted a break. My parents started talking to me yesterday evening as we sat around the dining table in my comfortable apartment. Their words were filled with remorse and humility. They pleaded for my forgiveness, acknowledging that they had been unaware of Lisa's actual character for so long. My father apologized for not paying attention to my earlier warnings. He acknowledged that they were blind to the reality behind Lisa's endearing facade and never anticipated her to turn out this way. My mother agreed with my father and recognized the seriousness of their error in ignoring my worries about Lisa's actions throughout the years. As she expressed the anguish of learning how they had let me down by preferring Lisa, her voice faltered. I told them how much I valued their initiative in asking for my pardon. I talked about a number of distressing memories of the years of suffering I went through because of Lisa's behavior. When my parents heard what I had gone through on my own, they were completely taken aback and appalled. They apologized for the loneliness I had inside my own family and acknowledged the suffering I had endured. Since they never anticipated being pregnant with Lisa and always thought of her as their miracle child, my parents described how their partiality for her had influenced their decisions. Their voices were earnest as they pleaded for my pardon for all those years. I had always desired their recognition, therefore it was a moment of mixed emotions for me. It was a turning point that gave our family dynamic much-needed honesty and clarity, even though it might not have been the best approach to patch things up. We were now recognizing the problems that had afflicted our family for the first time in years. We all decided to work through this together after I informed them that it would take some time to regain their trust. As of right now, I want to enjoy every moment of my family's visit to me during the next few days. Update 4. My parents and I spent more time together as the days went by, taking leisurely dinners, visiting the lively streets of San Francisco, and just enjoying one another's company. Rebuilding the relationships that had been damaged by years of partiality and denial has been quite the struggle. I realized that their choice to turn to me for comfort was motivated by more than simply putting physical distance between them and Lisa. It was also a desire to reunite the family they had nearly lost. Like them, I needed a new beginning. Since then, my parents and I have spoken about what to do with Lisa. At the moment, she is lodging at a friend's house. Despite the chaos she has brought into our life, we cannot just leave her. Even if their daughter's conduct have been terrible, my parents feel a strong sense of duty to her as parents. We've accepted the possibility that her actions could point to more serious problems than simple purposeful mischief. To learn more about her situation, we intend to investigate the possibility of a mental health evaluation. Since Lisa is an adult, we are unable to coerce her into undergoing such an evaluation. Instead, we must devise a strategy to motivate her to freely seek assistance. When they return home, my parents want to get in touch with Lisa to see if she's willing to have a conversation. She still has a lot of anger toward me, therefore I don't want to get in touch with her because I don't want to make things worse for her mental health. Given her history of violence and hostility, I have urged my parents to meet her in a public setting to make her learn to regulate her emotions. We want Lisa to understand our point of view and, above all, to understand how much we care and love her. This is about resolving the problems that have caused tension in our relationships as a family, not about placing blame. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.